everybody, it's Khristina from Redefine Creative, and I have been off my channel for a little bit, and I am so excited to be back. And it is super sad because it is already towards the end of the month, and this is the very first time I have gotten to pull out my June for the Love of Homemade kits. But we're going to make it work. We're going to go with it. And so I'm pulling out a bunch of pattern paper first. As I often do, I kind of start with what I want my foundation to look like. And I have a 4x6 photo and two 3x4s. The second 3x4 isn't going to make it onto this page, so it's going to become its own like companion page. But basically, I'm just going to create some layers behind my photos at this point. And so these two pictures are from going to a place called the Doughnut Vault in Chicago. And if you've been around my channel for a while, or if you're brand new, my son is sort of like a donut connoisseur. He loves donuts. And so when we travel, we make a big effort to try out like the local places that are recommended for donuts. And so one of the places that was recommended to us in Chicago was this place called the Doughnut Vault. And it was totally different than anywhere else we have ever been for donuts. So it's basically in downtown Chicago, and it's underneath like a fire escape of a building. It's this little teeny tiny place. And you go in, and they basically have a rack of fresh donuts and a vintage cash register, and that's basically it. And they have maybe like 3 different kinds of donuts that you can pick from. And so it was a completely different, totally unique donut experience. As you can see, the photo that doesn't make it on is Ty with his 2 donut choices. But that one will go on the companion page. And so it was just a really like unique, fascinating experience to go there. So what I am doing is I cut apart that ticket paper, and that is one of my absolute favorite kind of pattern papers and ways to build embellishments, is using all of these vintage like tickets and ticket stubs and that kind of thing. And you know me, I love a good camera, so I'm going to fussy cut some cameras as well. So I basically started 3 embellishment clusters. One is in the top left, one is kind of over on that right-hand side towards the bottom of my second photo, and then I have one along the bottom. And you saw me put a sticker border on, and then you saw me cover it up with yellow paper because I decided that I didn't really like it on there. But I'm using this kind of grayish stripe as my background, and then I put a bolder, bigger stripe on top of it, along with kind of that little yellow geometric and the flowers. And I made sure as I was layering all those papers that I had papers that were different size prints all kind of layered up together. So it doesn't necessarily look like they're competing. It's not super busy, even though there's a lot of pattern paper going on. So my title is just going to say Sweet Memories, and I created that using some thickers combined with one of the pieces of chipboard from the Maggie Holmes sheet. And now I'm just kind of flipping through the embellishment pack that came with this Maggie Holmes collection. It's part of my kit this month. Trying to see if there's pieces I can use, and I'm going to use that little goldish colored tag topper. And then there's this little like, almost looks like a postage stamp label. And I'm going to tuck that in 2 different places in my layout. So I'm going to have one in the bottom, and then I'm going to take the other half and kind of tuck it in up here at the top. So I'm just creating those layers. So I started with all of those tickets, then I added a camera to each cluster. Now I went back to the chipboard sheet, and I'm adding a heart to each cluster. And this is very much, even when I'm not filming, kind of how my brain works and how I put my embellishment clusters together. So I will very often pick an element I know I want to use, like let's say a camera, and then I will make sure that I have that element in each of my embellishment clusters as I go. And I'm not somebody who tends to glue as I go usually, so it's just kind of all sitting there. And that works out well because in this case, I decide I want some stamping behind each one of my clusters. And in order to add that stamping, I kind of have to move everything around. So I'm using some Catherine Pooler Black Midnight ink in one of my favorite stamp sets, and this is from Darkroom Door. It's like this set of numbers and ledgers and all those kinds of things. And I tuck a little bit of that kind of peeking out in each of my embellishment clusters, and then I decide to go ahead and put my cameras on some foam adhesive, so they're going to be a little bit elevated off the page. And because I'm using so many like flat embellishments, so mainly paper, adding that dimensional adhesive becomes really important because it gives that additional dimension and texture to each of my clusters without me having to completely switch into using something like new and different. So I'm not using a lot of like stickers or things with a whole lot of texture, so adding that foam adhesive makes it look like I'm doing those things. I am going to go ahead and add just a couple of these little phrase stickers into some of my clusters. These were also something I put in my For the Love of Homemade kits this month. So I'm getting all of those kind of elements on there. I did feel like I needed a little bit more black underneath my two photos to kind of anchor everything because it looked like it was floating a little bit in that bold stripe. So I cut just a sliver off of the camera paper and tucked that in there. And you can't tell that it's cameras, but it does give that little pop of black and white. I am going to go ahead and add some black splatters to each one of my clusters. And when I'm working with Maggie Holmes collections, for some reason I often end up adding either black or gold splatters. I just really like the way that kind of plays with the vintagey look of a lot of her collections. And I managed to get it all over that little chipboard guy, so you just saw me cleaning him off real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some black Nuvo drops to each of my clusters as well so that I get some of those bigger, a little bit more puffy looking splatters. And that is basically going to do it. So I apologize it has taken me so long in the month to get to my kit, but I am super happy with this first layout and can't wait to keep working. I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.